Hey everyone, welcome back to Say What, your go-to podcast for diving deep into the quirks and fun of the English language. I'm William.
And I'm Amelia. Today's episode is all about clearing up something that can be confusing, even for people who've been studying English for years: the difference between idioms and slang. If you're an English learner, or even if you're just interested in languages, this episode is for you.
Absolutely, Amelia. Idioms and slang are two of those things that add so much personality to language, but they can be tricky because they're not always literal. They're both ways of expressing ideas creatively, but they're used differently. Amelia, want to give us a quick definition of each?
Of course. So, idioms are phrases where the meaning isn't obvious from the individual words. Think of it as a mini-story or concept packed into a few words. For example, raining cats and dogs. You wouldn't expect animals to fall from the sky. It just means it's raining really hard.
Right. And then there's slang, which is more casual, often trendy language that specific groups or age ranges use. Slang words and phrases change with the times, so what's popular today might not be used a few years down the line. It's more like a code that adds some flavor to everyday language. Instead of saying something is very exciting, you might hear someone say, "That's fire."
Exactly. And we thought it would be fun to do a deep dive today with some examples and talk about why each of these can be so useful. Maybe even give a few tips on when and where to use them, so you don't accidentally sound too casual in a formal setting, or too old-fashioned among friends.
Great idea. So let's get started with idioms. I'll kick things off with one of my favorites, barking up the wrong tree. Amelia, do you know what that one means?
I do. If someone says you're barking up the wrong tree, it means you're looking for answers or trying to solve a problem in the wrong place. Imagine a dog barking at a tree when there's nothing up there. Kind of a waste of effort, right?
Exactly, it's a great visual. And that's one thing about idioms. They're often like mini-stories that give language more depth and color. Plus, they're memorable once you get the hang of them, even if they don't make sense at first.
Right. And idioms also have cultural connections. They can give you insight into the history or even humor of a language. Some idioms have been around for centuries and come from old stories, historical events, or even myths. They can be a fun way to understand a culture on a deeper level.
Definitely. Now let's move on to some popular idioms and their meanings. I'll give you another example. Throw in the towel. Do you know that one?
Yes, I do. It comes from boxing, right? When a boxer's team throws a towel into the ring, it means they're giving up. So, when you say you're throwing in the towel, you mean you're quitting or admitting defeat.
Right on. And see, even though it comes from sports, it's something you might hear in an office setting or among friends. I've been trying to fix this computer all day, but it's just not working. I'm throwing in the towel.
Such a great example. And here's one more idiom for you, William. Cutting corners.
Yes. To cut corners means to take shortcuts or do something in a way that saves time or effort, often by compromising quality. If someone says, "They're cutting corners on this project," it might mean they're not putting in the best effort.
Exactly. And sometimes, it's not meant as a compliment. It's often used when someone's rushing or trying to save money by doing less work.
Good one. All right, so now that we've covered some idioms, let's dive into slang. Slang is always changing, so keeping up with it can feel like learning a new language. Amelia, want to give us a popular slang term?
Sure. Let's start with ghosting. If someone says they've been ghosted, it means that the other person stopped responding to them without any explanation, like they just disappeared.
Yes, that's a perfect example. Ghosting is super common in dating contexts, but people use it in friendships and even for jobs sometimes. Like, I applied for that position, but after the interview, they ghosted me.
Exactly. It's one of those terms that's evolved from the way we interact online and through texting, and it might not have even existed in this context 20 years ago.
That's so true. Another slang term that's popular is FOMO, which stands for fear of missing out. People use it when they're worried about not being part of something fun or important.
Yes, and it's almost like a cultural phenomenon now. People use it to describe that anxious feeling when you see your friends having fun without you on social media.
Here's another one. Salty. If someone says, "Don't be salty," it doesn't mean you're literally full of salt. It means you're acting a bit bitter or annoyed.
Yes, and it's almost like a cultural phenomenon now. People use it to describe that anxious feeling when you see your friends having fun without you on social media.
All right, so we've got a good mix of idioms and slang. I think it's time to talk a bit about when to use these, because you don't want to accidentally sound too casual or too confusing.
Good point, William. I'd say idioms are generally safer to use in more formal settings, depending on the idiom. They're widely understood by English speakers, so you could use them in a business presentation, for example, without sounding too informal.
Definitely. Slang, on the other hand, is a bit riskier in formal situations. It's best saved for conversations with friends, family, or casual settings. Using slang in a business meeting, unless it's really common, can come off as unprofessional.
And, as we mentioned earlier, slang also depends a lot on age, culture, and region. Lit and fire are super common right now, but older generations might not know what you're talking about. And some slang can even mean different things in different countries.
Right. Context is everything. It's also why you'll sometimes see people being careful about the slang they use online, depending on the audience.
So, let's give our listeners a few tips on how to learn idioms and slang without getting too confused. First, I'd say, pay attention to context. Listening to native speakers or watching English language movies and TV shows is a great way to see how idioms and slang are used in real life.
Yes, context is huge. And another good tip is to try out idioms first, since they're more widely understood and versatile. Then, when you feel comfortable, start experimenting with slang in casual conversations or online where it feels appropriate.
And don't forget to ask if you're ever unsure. English speakers are usually happy to explain, and it's a great way to learn the nuances of language.
Great tips. So, to wrap up, idioms are longer-lasting phrases with meanings that aren't literal, like barking up the wrong tree. They're often safe to use in both formal and informal settings. Slang is more like a trendy shortcut that's more casual, like saying something is lit when you mean it's exciting.
And knowing both idioms and slang can help you sound more natural and connect with people more easily. They add personality to your language and make you sound more like a native speaker.
Well, that's all for today. Thanks for tuning in to Say What. We hope this helped you understand the world of idioms and slang a little better.
And remember, whether you're breaking the ice or spilling the tea, have fun with language. Keep practicing, keep experimenting, and soon you'll be speaking English like a pro.
Until next time, keep it lit and don't be afraid to hit the sack after a long day of learning. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe and comment below to let us know your favorite idioms or slang terms. We'd love to hear from you and include your suggestions in future episodes.
Absolutely. Your feedback helps us create better content for you. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.